Hello there, my name is Paul the Star Wars Guy, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And welcome, of course, to video number 3 in my series of reviewing every single Star Wars movie. Today's video is, of course, about Return of the Jedi. So, wasting no time and sort of recapping what I've already said in my previous 2 videos on New Hope and Empire, I saw the whole original trilogy in the build-up to Episode 3 releasing in theaters in a big marathon with my parents. However, with Return of the Jedi, I was not able to see the very end of it the first time that I saw it, because of course being in 5th grade, I still had a bedtime to abide by no matter what. I didn't see the ending of Return of the Jedi proper until many years later when I was in high school and I was hanging out with my grandfather on my dad's side. Now, until I saw the end of Return of the Jedi, I did have this picture book that had scenes from Return of the Jedi, and it told the story in a very easy to understand way for a child. So I knew in a very basic way what happened. I knew that Luke defeated Vader in a lightsaber duel, that the Emperor tortured Luke with his Force lightning, and that Vader ultimately turns good, kills the Emperor by throwing him down a big hole, and of course takes his helmet off for Luke to see him before he dies. But, of course, reading it in a children's book and seeing it actually play out on screen are two entirely different experiences. But I knew, even without seeing the end of Return of the Jedi, that when I first saw it, I liked it even more than I did Empire. However, as I've grown older and as I've seen the original trilogy more and more, I know I said in my Empire Strikes Back video that I was on the fence as to which one I liked more, Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, because there's things that I think Empire does better than Jedi, and things that I think Jedi does better than Empire. But since that video, I've had some more time to think about it, and I've decided that for me, Empire Strikes Back just barely edges out above Return of the Jedi for me. Though, with a few exceptions, I do still very much love Return of the Jedi, and we're going to go over why that is in this video. So, getting the negative stuff out of the way, here is what ultimately drags down Return of the Jedi for me. I personally think that everything to do with Jabba's palace sort of overstays its welcome for me. Specifically when it comes to the musical number in Jabba's palace. Now again, in preparation for this video, I watched the version of Return of the Jedi that's on Disney+. So this means it's the special edition version that has the extended musical number with CGI in Jabba's palace. It takes away Vader's eyebrows when he takes his mask off. It gives us Hayden Christensen as Force Ghost Anakin on Endor with Obi-Wan and Yoda. And of course, the victory celebration theme at the very end instead of the Yub Nub theme. And of course, showing various locations around the galaxy. And for me, I don't mind any of those changes except the musical number in Jabba's palace. Now, there was a very brief moment in my childhood where I had seen the original theatrical version of Return of the Jedi, and I know that they had a much different musical number scene in Jabba's palace that didn't have CGI. And I didn't mind that one that much when I saw it, but for me, the CGI that they used for the special edition version of that musical number just does not look good to me anymore. It looks like it came from a PlayStation 2 game or a GameCube game, and not in the best way. But regardless, for me, I don't think that the musical number really needed to be there to begin with. It just kind of put the movie on pause until Leia and Chewie walked in, and really all it did was tease the Rancor, which for me at least, we could have left that a complete surprise until Luke is dropped down there to face it in a pretty entertaining fight. And I get why Luke had to plan out what he did to get Han ultimately out, where he had to send R2 and C-3PO in first, just so that he could have C-3PO be Jabba's interpreter, and have R2 pre-stationed with Luke's lightsaber. on Jabba's sail barge so that he could use it later, which then again would have been very useful against the Rancor, but who cares? I didn't write the story. But yeah, ultimately, everything within Jabba's palace, for me, just overstays its welcome. They could have cut the musical number out and we would not have missed anything. And the plan for me could have been condensed down a little bit. Like me personally, I would have had Leia, Chewie, R2, and C-3PO gone in together. They could have framed it where Leia, as the bounty hunter, was bringing in Chewie, R2, and C-3PO to Jabba as a prize. And they could have used the reasoning that R2 and C-3PO were known associates of Han Solo, and therefore Leia, as the bounty hunter, could have gotten a little bit of extra cash for not only bringing in Han Solo's his second in command, but also the two droids that he was known to be associated with. But again, that's just me. And really, that's the only thing negative, that's blatantly negative, that I have to say about Return of the Jedi. Everything else, the battle at the Sarlacc pit onward, I love that. Though, we do got to talk about the reveal of Luke being Leia's sister, and how that kind of affects the story retroactively. Now, I don't remember. It's clear that Luke was not supposed to be Leia's sister, that Luke and Leia were not supposed to be related, and that in George Lucas's original versions of episodes 7, 8, and 9, Luke's sister was not supposed to appear until episode 8. I remember hearing about it once, but I don't remember now why George Lucas decided to change that, but it does definitely raise some questions as to why Leia would kiss Luke in episode 5 if she admits in episode 6 that somehow she always knew that Luke was her brother. I get why she did it in Empire, because she did it to make Han jealous. I said that in the last video, but you don't kiss your brother, period. Unless it's like maybe on the cheek, but you don't kiss your brother on the lips, period, to make someone jealous or not. But again, that's really the only thing negative that I have to say about Return of the Jedi. Everything else I absolutely love. So, going back to my analogy that I set in the first two videos, Return of the Jedi is very clearly the end of what I have presented as the hero's journey, where, to recap, the hero starts out in this humble origin of a place, but is called onto this grand adventure that ultimately leads him to defeat this great evil and bring peace. And along the way, he comes across different mentors. He may stumble upon the way, but he gets back up. He's tested and tempted in different ways to lead him astray, and ultimately, he overcomes all of that to defeat the great evil. And we see in this movie all of the efforts of the hero, in this case Luke, we see that pay off. We see the collapse of the Empire. We see the redemption of Vader. We see the death, at least that we thought, for the Emperor. And we see Luke emerge the other side, as he says, a Jedi, like his father before him. But I like how just before that, we do see more and more of his father come out in Luke. Even from the very beginning that we first see him in person, we see him walk into Jabba's palace and immediately force choke the two Gamorrean guards. A Jedi would not have done that unless his name was Anakin Skywalker. A Jedi would also not have said, "You should have bargained with me, Jabba. That'll be the last mistake you ever make. Free us or die." A Jedi also would not have grabbed their lightsaber to try and strike down an unarmed man, and certainly would not have gotten enraged when their sister was threatened. At least the model Jedi would not have. But we do see a very Jedi-like moment in Luke where he realizes how alike he and his father are and how close he actually came to falling into the Emperor's clutches and fully turning to the dark side when he sees that his own mechanical hand is pretty much the same thing that he just cut off of his father. And there he has that moment of clarity, throws his lightsaber aside, and says, "No, I'll never turn to the dark side. I am a Jedi, like my father before me." And that whole lightsaber fight, by the way, that is one example of what I think Return of the Jedi did better than Empire Strikes Back. The lightsaber fight between Luke versus Vader in Empire was great as a fight on its own, but me personally, I prefer the lightsaber fight that they have in Return of the Jedi over that. In fact, Luke versus Vader Episode 6 is my favorite lightsaber fight of all time. It may not be as fast-paced and flashy as, say, Obi-Wan versus Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, but what it makes up for in flashiness, it brings in storytelling and especially psychology. Because while Luke may be fighting a one-on-one fight, mentally he's fighting a two-on-one fight of both the Emperor and Vader trying to convince him to give into his anger and fall to the dark side and ultimately serve Palpatine. And Luke is managing to hold his own until, of course, Vader touches a nerve by mentioning Leia. Now, one thing that I think Empire does better than Jedi is the relationship with Leia and Han, where we see them decide whether or not they love each other or not. And then, of course, in Jedi, we just see that they just flat out love each other. For me, it's one of those things where the journey to get there is more interesting than the actual destination. I personally liked seeing them realize that they were in love than seeing them actually in love, though they do still do a good job of that. And of course, Yoda dies in this movie, and it's a very sad death. He, of course, reveals that there's another Skywalker, which Obi-Wan later confirms is Leia. And then Darth Vader. This is where I'm genuinely split between which I prefer more, Empire Strikes Back Vader or Return of the Jedi Vader. Because, of course, in Empire Strikes Back, we see Vader at the peak of his power, both in the Force and in authority, as this monster that the Empire has on their side. But in Return of the Jedi, we see cracks in that monster facade continue to develop the more that he realizes that he cares for Luke. I've heard it said that Vader's true turn to the light started when he saw Luke fall in Cloud City down that big pit in Empire Strikes Back, willing to rather kill himself than make himself a slave to the Empire. Seeing that is what started Vader's return to the light, and we see him continue that more and more, where he realizes that he's expendable to the Emperor, that he can't bear to watch the Emperor torture his son, and he eventually decides to do something about it. In fact, even in the middle of the movie, the Emperor calls out Vader, "Hey, is your head in the right place? You're thinking about your son a lot. I need you focused on the mission." And of course, Vader plays it off like, "Yeah, I'm where my head's where I'm supposed to be." But you could tell that he still was wanting to be with his son. And then the final scene of Vader dying, him taking his mask off, was just absolutely beautiful, as was the scene where he has his funeral. So, ultimately, Return of the Jedi, I like it, but there's also parts that I don't like again, Jabba's palace. And things that I think Empire did better than Jedi, it didn't have the needless musical number. I liked Han and Leia's relationship a little bit better in Empire than I did in Jedi. But for me, Return of the Jedi makes up for all of that with my favorite lightsaber fight in the whole series from a storytelling perspective. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. please be sure to tune in to my live stream. I'm recording this, well, it's 12:03 now at Wednesday, April 21st. So you're going to be watching this during the day on Wednesday. So tune in tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I'll be doing a live stream, sort of capping off my thoughts and feelings on the original trilogy, hopefully with a few guests, before I start delving into the prequels. So that's going to be it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a like, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much.